Okay, so we got these guys that are waiting for me. This is my blog.
No problem.
These guys are
on your YouTube channel?
Yes.
I watched that.
All right, see, he even knows who I am. These guys are from PSU, PCC, doing a documentary about TriMet, and as you can see, they are serious about their facilities. So I'm going to sit down here into this blasting light.
We are going to get you on the side here.
Right here?
No, wrong side. This side. Sorry, my bad. Okay. Alright, we got to mic you up, so if you could run this cable underneath your shirt, please.
Mind if I keep this on?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Cool.
Just,
As long as it doesn't make noise, I don't care what it does.
nope, it won't make noise.
Can we get going underneath your shirt? Just so we
Underneath?
don't see the wire?
Oh,
Yeah.
like this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Want me to button it up more?
I think it should be fine. What do you guys?
Should be good.
They're good now? Here, there you go.
That is,
Just put that down somewhere.
I put it next to you.
Okay. Here?
Yep.
Or maybe a bit further back, I said. There we go.
How's
It's on
that?
the shot. He looks good. He's looking great. Look at that.
Yes.
You get a close up. We got a close up.
Okay, so you need to talk some?
Huh? Whoops, that's upside down. What now? Oh, talk. I'm talking.
Alright.
How's it sound?
Okay, yes.
Alright.
Alright. Ready to start recording? Yeah.
Anytime you're ready.
Can we have you look at the director?
The director, I'll look at you.
Yes, look at
I mean, yeah, we're gonna, like,
That's the director. Let's get a shot of the director. There you go.
Yep.
rolling. Alright, if you could start off with your name and how are you associated with TriMet?
My name is Al Margulies. I was a driver for 15 years, blogger for 7 years, retiree for 2 years, and just love bus news and bus information. So I'm still involved. I just follow TriMet right to the T.
Alright, so one of my first questions is, what do you think about the radio systems that TriMet has?
They're not working. I mean, I spend half my day listening to the dispatch calls, and they don't work correctly. 35 million? Seems like they should work for 35 million, you know. Seems like you can buy a hell of a radio system for 35 million, so there's a problem there, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better. So, I mean, that doesn't just come from me. That comes from the director of the person who is in charge of the dispatchers, you know. They're having a lot of problems there. It doesn't get fixed. I don't know why. Nobody knows why. Nobody knows the way the executives think. We're in another world.
Alright. Could you repeat that? We have some noise in the background. And also, could you answer your, could you put the question in your answer?
The question and my answer.
Yeah.
Okay, try again. Take 2. Ready?
Yeah, so I go ahead and ask a question. Yeah, so about the radio system, what are the problems with the radio system?
What are the problems with the radio system? Well, let's see. The dispatch control has a lot of trouble establishing a link to the driver. It seems to be ongoing. Drivers can't hear dispatch. Dispatch can't hear drivers. It seems like the mechanism is very hard to use. The part where they push the buttons or whatever. That's what appears from my angle. I don't know anything about these new radio systems. They didn't have them when I was working there. But the problem is establishing effective communication between dispatch and the operators. Seems to be significant delays. In some cases, they can't reach them at all, which is obviously a very serious safety problem.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So, about the union, you yourself are a union member?
Yes.
And how has the union tried to talk to TriMet to make it more safer?
The $1 million question. Well, none of us members really know the workings of the union vis-a-vis the executives. We don't get to see that. I'm not really sure. I couldn't answer that and tell you what their steps are. I know that the union has been frustrated by TriMet more than once, like ongoing frustration. So I'm not sure what they're doing. I mean, they ran a lot of ads trying to show the other side of the point, because TriMet's constantly putting out propaganda against its union members. And the union has tried to counter that in the media. That's the only thing I know personally, because all of the negotiation stuff, which, by the way, was supposed to be public, if you remember. They made this whole big deal about making that public and allowing, it turned out to be secret. Nobody's there. And even at the time, I knew there was something fishy about that. So nobody's covering the negotiations publicly. So once again, we're back into secret deals. That wasn't supposed to happen this time either, so that's questionable. Part of that I blame on the union, because how come they didn't push it the way they started to? They're letting this go secret, so. I don't think the union's perfect, not by any stretch of the imagination, but at least it's some barrier to the ruthlessness of the TriMet executives. If you don't have that, you have no kind of protection from the executives over there, or any executives really.
All right. Another question I have is, does TriMet actually have safety guidelines, and how well does TriMet follow those guidelines?
Well, when I was there, I drove all kinds of, the equipment I drove was all old and was unsafe. It was unsafe equipment, but I knew how to drive, and I knew what I could do, what I couldn't do. And when you're a driver, the final analysis is up to how are you. They can have a million rules, but if you don't know what you're doing, you're not going to be safe. You know, rules on paper are one thing, real life is another. You know, I found that everybody followed their own rules when I worked there. You know what I mean? Nobody's doing the same thing. There's really no uniformity there. You know, I've been gone for almost 2 years, but the 15 years I was there, it's amazing how different everybody does the job. Everybody's just so different. So there's really hard, you know, some drivers are really good, some drivers aren't good. It's all individuals there. It depends on who you get. I don't know what TriMet's doing to really, I know they put out a lot of safety words. You know, they're always talking safety, but does it actually translate to anything in real life? I wonder. I don't know. I didn't see it when I was there. Maybe somebody else sees it.
Do the drivers, do they complain about, how do they communicate to the TriMet managers?
Well, most drivers have serious problems with managers there, okay. There's a problem between management and frontline staff, you know, there's a breakdown. The management doesn't really understand what the front line is doing, really. It's, you know, they'll get some report on a piece of paper and assume things that they have no right in assuming. There's a communication problem. From my impression, now once again, I'll say maybe other people have other opinions, but I spent a lot of time talking to people when I was working there. You know, I was fascinated by that, just like you guys here, you know, interested. And most people I talked to never really had good words about the management, unfortunately. The older management, which was with Fred Hansen, was a lot more progressive about a lot of things. There's no doubt about that in my mind. The older management was much more progressive-minded than the Neil McFarland management, because things noticeably changed for me personally when he came into power. And I know that he had some say in, you know, this guy, we're going to get him under control, you know, and you're going to do it now. And I'm not working there anymore, am I? And there's a lot of that as a result of their constantly hassling me. I'm perfectly capable of working, as you can see, but I left early because it was unpleasant for me. You don't want to be working in an environment where you're being set up by your own employer.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I've never seen that happen before.
That was surprising to me too. I didn't think, the longer I know these people, the more I see what they'll resort to get their way. You know, they put on this great front, smiling, cheery, green, sustainable, great life. But you know, if you really look closely there's this underbelly that is very ugly. But you got to really look for it, because you'll never find it just by watching their press releases. It's very well hidden. They're masters at this. they're masters at hiding the truth. They're just really incredibly good at it. I have to respect them for that, really, and I do. That how well they've been able to keep hold of the agenda here in this community. Just masterful propaganda techniques they have. I wish I could be that good with them, you know. They're just great. I admit it. That marketing department is good.
All right. Other question I have is concerning the lane changes on the Hawthorne Bridge. What exactly is the problem?
The lane change, I don't know much about that because, you know, I stopped driving in Portland last 9 years of my career were all in Beaverton when I realized that there's this place called Suburbia and you don't have to drive in Portland. You actually can drive in Suburbia if you have the choice. So I just stayed out in Beaverton for the last 9 years. So I'm not sure what the issue even is. I mean, buses aren't supposed to change lanes or something. I wouldn't imagine any bus would change lanes on the bridge, would they?
Well, as far as I know, when there's a bike lane now, in between where the bus is supposed to pick up passengers and the main lanes, and so buses are constantly going between.
Well, it's bad, obviously. It's a safety hazard. I mean, they shouldn't be crossing in and out of. They're coming right off that bridge. If you're going east, there's the problem getting over to the bus stop. That's immediate. There's all these bikes coming at you as you're going across. It's ridiculous. I even went down there and looked at that. I couldn't believe how unsafe that was. But most drivers are good drivers. I mean, most TriMet drivers are skilled. And they don't have accidents. It's very rare to get a bad accident here, as you know. I mean, we had one really bad one, Sandy Day. Most of the other ones are all fender bender stuff. Very, very rare for people to get hurt in the bus. It's because the drivers are actually very skilled, regardless of what the mainstream media puts forth. That's why no bikes are getting hit, because it's certainly hazardous enough.
All right. Actually, the other day there was a train derailed. Do you know exactly?
Well, there was a complicated explanation that it's on my blog. Something to do with the truck and the parts on the truck. I don't know. I wasn't Max, so I don't know. But you can look that up on, you know, some maintenance issue, of course. I mean, the union has been talking about that forever. You know, these things are getting older and older, and they're not doing the maintenance to keep it up. They're too busy expanding the system to keep up with what they have. That's one of the major problems here is you can't continually expand service and maintain what you have when you're dealing with finite resources. So yeah, it's a maintenance issue. Obviously they didn't do something correctly. That kind of thing's not supposed to happen. Your truck isn't supposed to fall off. And that's what happened. It's just lucky the train was going slow, because otherwise people would have been hurt. Yeah, it's a complete failure of maintenance.
Right. Are there any senators or does the governor, what laws are being put in place, do you know, that would make TriMet safer? Do you know if any lawmakers are doing anything?
They're doing this audit right now, the Secretary of State's audit. I don't know if that's going to actually have any, you know, I'm always suspicious of the state monitoring the state, and all these politicians are all interconnected with each other. You know that. You know, they all know each other. I'm always suspicious about these internal audits. I'm sure they'll address that. I don't, you know, you hear $30 in David Sale. I mean, there's certain things that can be done to make the Max crossing safer. But you know how it is. I mean, government will allow so many people to be killed before they'll put in a red light, for example. You know, the citizens don't really count when it comes to government policy. And that's what you see here with the lack of safety. It's all very nice propaganda. We can talk about it and, you know, be seen, be safe, but actually getting them to do things themselves, getting government to actually react to citizens is a whole other story. Okay, after 20 people are killed, we'll put in the red light, but the first 19, oh well, it's just collateral damage, you know, that's pretty much how the government thinks, and TriMet is just part of government, so they're doing the same thing that they all do. So what, we lose a few people here and there, big deal. I really believe that too, by the way. You know, if it hadn't been for David Sale and $30, who knows what would have, nothing would have been. those two advocates were the ones that pushed for the safety, and because they were tenacious, they got the safety. It was those two that did it.
In your opinion, there was an issue that came up with a whooping cough issue a couple weeks ago. Do you think TriMet reacted the way it should have? Or?
No, they should have told, but that should have been a press release. A suspected case of whooping cough occurred on this bus at this time. People that were on that bus should be advised to maybe go get some antibiotics or something. They should have put that out right away. It shouldn't have had to come through the Twitters, to the blogs, then to the media. It had to make its way through the whole internet chain before it made it to the mainstream media. It should have been, that's the kind of thing that they need to do is, we had this happen on this bus. If you're on that bus on this line, call us or call public health. Well, but that would damage their image. Oh no, we can't damage their image. By the way, I heard that turned out to be a confirmed case of whooping cough because the media backpedaled on that. They had the public health service come on TV or come on and say, well, we don't even know if it's really a case of whooping cough. It might not be a real case. Well, I heard that it actually was a confirmed case. I don't have any way to prove that, but that's what I heard.
All right. Anything else? Do you guys have anything else that you want to ask?
Yeah. So we're talking about all these negatives. Let's talk about the positive.
Positive?
Yeah.
It's a transit system. 99 times out of 10, or 9 out of 10 times, it'll get you where you got to go. It's that one time that doesn't get you there that screws up your life today. Yeah, it's, I've been on other transit systems. It's just, from here in Northwest Portland, I have no complaints. That 15 runs like clockwork here, and I take it right across the street. I've seen a lot of cities that had worse transit systems. If you live in downtown Portland, you have no right to complain. You've got good transit down here. You've got streetcars, you've got buses, you got everything down here. There's no doubt that the best positive thing about TriMet in Portland is the downtown transit is just great because you don't have to wait down here. It's the areas outside of the core that don't get this kind of deal. But if you're down here, gee, that's your positive. Damn, you get buses all over. I'm a little bit unhappy with the frequency of the service at night and that it ends so early. But, it's great service. From downtown Portland, it's A. If you don't pay attention to the politics and the stuff, you don't know anything about it, what are you complaining about, really? It's a good service. If you look inside things, you might start having some questions. But if you're just using it as, like I do occasionally, go downtown or whatever, jump on the max, I can walk to the max 12 minutes. It's usually running, there's some high-profile breakdowns, but it's usually running pretty good. All things considered, the transit system runs good. And that's coming from the biggest critic. All things considered, it runs pretty well.
I have a couple questions. Could you elaborate on the acts that you were talking about, the $1.30 and the, I didn't quite catch that.
The what now?
The safety acts that you were talking about.
The safety?
You were talking about the two people that presented problems at TriMet.
Dollar Sturdy and David Sale. Yeah, Dollar Sturdy had a son who was hit by Max 1998 or I'm not sure of the dates. And anyway, she took up Max, the light rail safety cause, and went to the legislature, got legislatures to help her pass some kind of a safety law. I'm not really sure what it is, but it was supposed to promote safety. She was just at the last board meeting and mentioned that TriMet still hasn't implemented the terms of that law that she helped get passed. So Dollar Sturdy has been really tenacious, and then David Sale lost his daughter here in Northwest Portland, as a matter of fact, down on Gleason, and he's just been relentless in the bus safety. And those are the two people that really have promoted safety. There's been nobody else. And I don't even know if there'd be any safety to any of that stuff without them, really. David Sale especially. But that tragedy down here on Gleason is pretty profound, where the two people were killed. Assumingly. for no, I mean, that's the kind of accident I just don't understand. How can somebody run over people in a downtown crosswalk? It doesn't even compute, really.
Could you tell us what lines you've operated through the years for TriMet?
Sure. On this side of this river down here, you know, the 815 I used to take all the time because it comes right out in front of my place here. 33, 10, I've done a 71. And then I went over the west, you know, a bunch of other ones. And then I went over the west side and basically just did 67s, 88s, 89s. I did a couple of 52s, which I didn't like. They were just like being here in Portland. I try to stick to the small suburban routes that went through the neighborhoods. The routes that they're cutting. You know, the little routes that people can take from their house and get to the transit center. But they're doing away with those. Now they just want the high frequency routes. Cost effectiveness, you know, right?
Is there anything that you would recommend us investigating more?
Well, I think you should investigate the ticket machines. Well, you know, a lot of people have had problems buying tickets and then they get cited. They get cited for not having a ticket. The fare inspections, man, you should do some investigation about those. I really have a problem with the way they do the fare inspections. You know, the Gestapo technique. Stop the train, we get on the train, we hold everybody up, let me see your papers. People miss transfers because of that. You know, they're holding up the trains to do this. They'll hold up the bus and just stop the bus. I mean, there's got to be a better way to do that. Like, if they're going to do something like that, get on the train, at least let the train move. Don't hold up everybody if you're going to do that, you know. I just find it very inhuman. And the fine, $275 for a $2.50 ticket, that's predatory. I'm sorry. That's preying on, and these people, I've driven bus for 15, these are not people that have money. Some people don't have $2.50. And I'm not just saying that. That's a lot of money to some people. People that are fare evading, they're not doing it to, they don't want to spend the $2.50 is basically what it is because they're trying to save that. They're not evil people. They're broke. And so what ends up happening is they get caught and get into this ridiculous $250 ticket, which is just outrageous as far as I'm concerned. They spend a whole day at TriMet court dealing with it. I just think it's inhuman. I think the fare inspection thing is just horrible the way they do that here in the city. I wouldn't ride just because of that. I think it's a complete violation of privacy.
Speaking of privacy, there was a case brought up by the local news talking about the audio devices that have been placed on buses fairly recently. Do you think that's like necessary for safety?
I thought, look, I used to film when I was driving. I had a camera back before there were rules. I had a camera and I was interviewing bus riders. I was always in favor of cameras and audio because when you have incidents, you need that information. I mean, it's going to be more advantageous to drivers to have that than not have it because there's just too many variables with the traffic, with the public. And so I was always in favor of it. I think that it should be, no good driver should be fearful of that. I mean, it's there to help. I mean, the incidents, there's so many incidents on buses and trains, and you've got to have some way to verify stories. So I was in favor of it. A lot of drivers are not. They think it's an invasion of privacy. But I think that it's good. I support it. I know that if I had it, back when they manufactured my complaint, I could have proven that it was baloney. Actually, I could prove that it was a baloney complaint anyway because I was taping my entire shift. But I couldn't use it in my defense because that itself was a violation of TriMet rules, which could have gotten me fired. But I mean, if they have these things, you can't concoct complaints anymore because you can verify it. You can either look at the tape, listen to the audio. Nobody will be able to make a false complaint against the operator. And that's one of the biggest problems is there's more than half the complaints are just made up baloney. There's no way to, it's their word against yours. Well, if you have audio and video, you have a way to prove. So that's my answer.
had a question. God, what it was. There was.
You're on my TV station now, buddy. Yeah.
Oh yes. So this is what I heard, that there's totally spaced out. I forget. It's I don't think it was on there. Was it?
Was it my question or yours?
I don't remember. Okay. Well, there is. I heard there's the trains that or maybe buses that while they're going like 60 miles an hour, there are doors that don't close.
Oh, that was a train.
That was a train?
That was an incident that was a year ago, last summer, maybe. Yeah, there's a video of that exists. It's on my blog, actually. Yeah. That was only one incident that I know of with it. I mean, they had lots of trouble with the doors on the trains, constant trouble, all day long. That's the only one that we know of where the train was going down the track at 50 miles an hour with the door open.
I have a question that was actually on my list here. Some of the newer buses have some design flaws that create blind spots.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know anything about that?
Well, I went to look at the windows and I see there's brackets, right? Anything that's in your field of vision is a blind spot, and so there's these new brackets on the windshield. Apparently the windshields on the 3100s are pushed out a little further than the old ones, and they require bracketing to hold them in place. And obviously those are blind spots. And I've heard those buses are hurting some operators too, physically. I never did understand how they pick this equipment. The executives don't seem to get input from drivers, Because look at the new configuration. Have you been on one of those 3100? Have you sitting in the seat? They've got a strange curve on them. I mean, they're not comfortable. I didn't find them comfortable. A strange tilt or so. Who would buy that? I mean, why would you? Wouldn't you sit in the seat and say, "Gee, this isn't comfortable," before you went out and purchased it? So I wonder whether they even check these things sometimes. I wonder. You'll never find out because they'll never tell you. They'll tell you they had a committee and all of that.
So, this is probably the last question. So, do you think that there's plenty of room for improvement for trying?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, they should be having they have the basis here of one of the best in the world, really, if they could keep the thing going the way that it was supposed to be, instead of all these constant problems going on here. But you stretch it so thin that you can't keep it running appropriately. I mean, it's like I say, from here it's not a problem, but when I was driving on the west side, you have once an hour service somewhere and a bus drops out, then somebody's stranded an hour now. So that's serious fail when you're having service that doesn't come every 15 minutes and one of the buses drop out. That's serious fail. I mean, in the outer regions of TriMet, there's some serious problems with the way they're doing it. I mean, the people on the periphery of the system are getting shafted. Well, most people are going back to driving, really, because you can't use it. The 67 that I drove for years and years, they stopped running it on Sunday. I knew at least a dozen people that had to move because of that, because they needed the bus on Sunday. I mean, that's a serious fail when you eliminate a bus route that's been going for 20 years, a whole day. Sorry, we're taking away your Sunday service. Okay, a lot of people didn't ride it. It wasn't a full bus, but you've got people that relied on that. So it's the periphery areas that are the most problem here. Portland, everything is Portland. They should change the name of TriMet to Portland Transit, because it's a Portland Transit District.